Greetings and salutations, and welcome to Rewoke, Rewriting Our Kids' Educations. My name is Michelle Person, and we are on a journey. We are rethinking, re-examining, and re-educating ourselves and our children. Last week, we talked about the importance of woke writing instruction, and this week, we are going to shift a little and talk about math. I hate math. Simple mental math almost always has an error in it when it's my mental capacity doing the calculations. Ironically, even though I hate math as an individual, I'm actually a pretty phenomenal math teacher up until about 5th grade. It is my belief that when you have to teach something that you are not great at, it actually forces you to become a better teacher. You know exactly how to break down the lesson, what pitfalls to look for, because you know what you struggle with. It's really important to me that my students understand the reason behind the steps that I'm trying to teach, because I know if they understand the concept now, they will be able to apply it later as the math gets more difficult. Staci McDaniel is our guest today, and she has been doing this work of explaining math and breaking it down with diverse learners for over 2 decades. American mathematician William Paul Thurston said, "Mathematics is not about numbers, equations, computations, or algorithms. It's about understanding." So how are we making sure that our children understand? And oh yeah, are you woke? It is my experience that in the early grades, students enjoy math. Ask any kindergartner or 1st grader what their favorite subject is, and you might be surprised that you will hear math almost as often as you will hear reading or science. But then around 3rd or 4th grade, something changes. Math stops being fun and it starts being scary. And what do we do with scary things? We avoid them at all costs. The educator in me understands why. Math is like a puzzle that up until 3rd grade has very specific rules, and it makes it easy to figure out. There is one way to make numbers bigger, addition. There's one way to make numbers smaller, subtraction. All math problems follow a simple sequence. A plus B equals C. Fractions still make sense. There are halves, thirds, and fourths. That's it. Shapes are flat. You measure with a ruler and you measure everything in inches. All of this begins to change in 3rd grade. Multiplication can also make numbers bigger. Division can also make numbers smaller. Math problems might have missing numbers on either side of the equation. Combining fractions with different denominators is introduced, and shapes go from being simple and flat to being 3-dimensional. And when you measure with them, you might measure in a different measurement, and then that measurement has to be converted. Think about it. If you are already academically 1 to 2 years behind in school, and typically our Black and brown students are, adding all those extra steps and rules, it is easy to see how that might be overwhelming for a student. They shut down. Math becomes something to avoid at all costs, and it's unfortunate because on average, careers that require solid math skills pay significantly more than those based in the soft sciences or in literature. So how do we create learning environments that encourage our babies to explore, persist, and excel in math? Our guest today is Staci McDaniel, a universal design learning coach and educational consultant at the ESC of Lake Erie West. Staci McDaniel, thank you so much for agreeing to chat with us today. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing really good. I cannot say enough great things about Staci and her level of expertise when it comes to math instruction. Before we jump into your look-fors and your tips for today, can you tell the listeners what is your background? What have you been doing? How long have you been doing it? Tell us about your expertise.
Okay, well, this is my 25th year in education, and I think it's my 18th year as an administrator. My story started years ago, I guess. I was the student that nobody wanted in the classroom. I was, very hyper, very, I was the kid that was in second grade. I was put in the corner of the room and the teacher put a bookshelf in front of me and cornered me back there because I was just such a busybody. I couldn't stay focused. I got kicked out of the classroom all the time. I had, back in those days, they would actually put masking tape on your mouth. I was that kid. Then in fifth grade, I had this teacher who really took me under her wing and was trying to teach. She had just gotten her doctorate in reading education and wanted to help me learn to read. And so she worked with me off and on, throughout the year. And then in high school, I ended up being one of those students who had to take reading throughout high school because I was so far behind. I went from that kid to graduating fifth in my class. Although it was a small school, I will say that. We had 95 in our graduating class, but it was a struggle to climb to the top. I started teaching and I was like, oh, I don't know if I like this. I don't know, maybe this isn't my thing. The one school I was at, they didn't like my ways. I was having kids take pretzel sticks and build perimeter using non-standard units. And we were doing chants and cheers. And I made up a division slide and it goes to the song, The Electric Slide. And kids were learning to do division that way. And we were doing all these cool things and my scores were through the roof, but they didn't like that kids were out of their seats. They wanted them, in the rows that they had set up, and they would allow like groupings, but they wanted a lot more structure than what I had to offer. And they basically tried to counsel me out of education. I thought I was doing a good thing. I mean, I had to put a poster up on the door on the window slot so they couldn't see at lunchtime that I was working with kids because I would get in trouble with the union.
I'm going to stop you right there because I want our parents to understand like all the things that you're talking about. We talk all the time on the show about being woke and what it means in education and how really what that means is just going against traditional education and trying to find ways in which to reach kids that are unorthodox, that have them connect. And what you're describing right now are all the things that a woke teacher does. And so what it sounds like is it comes from a very authentic place for you because it's what if you had when you were in school, you might have liked school more. Like that's great. So parents, I hope the things that she was just talking about doing, getting the kids out their seat, using manipulative, using the pretzel rods, spending her time on her lunch break to give kids extra help. Those are all look fors when you're looking for what does it mean to do things differently or be woke in traditional education. So can you speak a little bit about the top 3 things that you do in your classroom, especially when you're working with a group of diverse learners, primarily Black and Brown students? What have you found in your 25 years in education? And I know a lot of your time has been working as a math coach in the different arenas and different schools that you've worked at. What do you coach teachers about doing? What do you do when you're actually in front of them? The top 3 things that you think makes the most impact.
So TEC, teacher, environment, and then the curriculum or the sequencing of the actual lessons. So when I work with teachers, we work on like 3 things. So first, concrete, representational, abstract. It's a model, and designing units from that very concrete, the manipulative state where kids are moving things around. It doesn't even matter whether you're talking a kindergartner or a junior high student. I have junior high students where we take a triangle and we tear the corners off and we rotate those corners together and it magically makes a 180-degree line, and they're like blown away. Like, let's not just memorize that there's 180 degrees in a triangle. Let's see it. Let's manipulate those things. And so that's the concrete stage. And then we go to the representational where kids are, using tally marks and number lines and drawings to represent their thinking, because they're moving away from those manipulatives. And so this is like the semi-concrete stage, and then graduating then to the abstract level, which I find most teachers, I mean, this is the way you and I learned is, boys and girls say we're going to learn subtraction with regrouping. Okay, first thing you do, if the top number is smaller than the bottom number, you're going to go to the 10 spot and you're going to cross it out. Like we give them rules and symbols, and it doesn't mean anything, but why does that happen? And so starting with that representation, the concrete, where you can see the manipulatives and you can literally regroup with the base 10 blocks or tokens or whatever you're using, and then graduate them to something representational where they're starting to see it on a number line or with tally marks or whatever, and then actually the abstract. Because the goal is, if they forget a rule, they should be able to reinvent it. They should be able to backtrack and go, oh yeah, this sounds right, or this looks right. Because the other thing is, kids will get answers and they don't even realize that they're wrong because they don't have enough number sense to even realize
that the answer is completely off. Like when you teach a kid, and the best example of that is when you teach a kid subtraction and they think they're following the rules, but they come to a number where the smaller number is on top, the bigger number is on the bottom. They will immediately they will subtract the number on the bottom from the number on the top, and be like, well, I subtracted, not understanding conceptually from a concrete level that that's impossible. You can't do that. And so that's when you have to recognize that you have to go back and teach those concrete skills. So listeners, I hope what you took away from that is that you should be looking to see that before your child's teacher begins teaching abstract concepts, subtracting with regrouping, or that there are 180 degrees in a triangle, that your kid is first coming home talking to you about the manipulatives they used in school, the games they played to learn concepts, and then they're learning parentheses, PEDMAS, then they're learning like, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. You shouldn't start learning the order of operations by saying, hey class, here's please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, let's go. Like, there's no conceptual understanding there. And if they don't memorize the please excuse my dear Aunt Sally the right way, they're going to make mistakes, and they won't even know they've made a mistake because they have no idea really what they're doing. So
right, they have no conceptual understanding. That's a good example.
Yep.
So then the other two things real quick for the teacher is student engagement. Are we getting kids out of their seats and moving, manipulating things, moving, talking, etc. And then making data-informed decisions. So those are the three things that the teacher has to do. For environment, we need environments where kids, there's great relationships between students and teacher, and a positive working environment. Kids they don't mind taking risk. They feel safe. They're not going to get made fun of if they're incorrect, and then the curriculum. And when I say curriculum, I don't mean the textbook. I mean what you're teaching, the order in which you teach it. It doesn't truly matter what book you're using. What the teacher brings to the table is 10 times more important than whether you adopted,
Jackson versus everyday math.
Yeah, it's exactly. That doesn't matter. So it's not the most important thing. Yeah.
So make sure, parents, that you're looking for teachers who are supplementing their child's learning with additional resources. Because again, like I used to always tell my teachers, the curriculum is not your Bible. The standards are your Bible. The skills that they need to understand, that's your Bible. What you use to access those standards, or how you choose to impart, that's up to you. You can use what we use. You can use whatever, as long as you understand that your goal is to make sure that the standard is understood, and not that, well, we did page 65. So to make sure parents, make sure, and teachers, make sure that you're bringing things in, supplemental resources, and great supplemental resources on Just Like Me Presents Remember Through Rhyme, that use some of these things, these songs, these games that Staci is mentioning. You can use those in the classroom because they work. Kids like to move, they like to sing, they like to work together, like they work, and it makes the math more fun. It makes it more engaging. Staci, can you talk to us a little bit about resources for parents at home that you can recommend? What do you recommend? And we always like free. Is there anything free that you can recommend?
Yes. There are. So there are two resources. One is the free math apps, and it's at mathlearningcenter.org. And then you just click on apps. There's everything from virtual base 10 blocks to manipulatives for fractions. Like, there are so many free. So it's kind of like a smartboard, except it's this website, and you just click on whatever manipulative you want, and 10 frames, 5 frames, 20 frames. They have it all. So it's an incredible resource, completely free. And then the other one for Ohio people, Open Space has a bunch of it's designed for teachers, but there's also parents could go in. There's a parent section, and it's lessons on specific. So you could put in like the standard and the grade level and pull up specific lessons. That website is openspace.infoohio.org.
And you don't have to be in Ohio. You can be in Pennsylvania, or since I was about to say Cincinnati. That's actually in Ohio. You could be in you could be in Florida. It does, like, that's the beautiful part about the internet, is you can be wherever. And I, as a teacher, as an administrator, I would always, Florida has some of the best test prep questions out there. And so I would always tell my teachers, now go on the Florida State website and pull all their stuff and use it in your classroom. So you don't actually have to be
in New York.
Yep. Florida and New York, they have great test prep questions. Do you have any suggestions for things that parents should be doing at home to support in-class learning?
Well, when it comes to math, one of the challenges is, they call it the new math. Parents are like, well, I didn't learn it this way. I learned it this way. And, just taking the time to explore the method, there's actually a lot of good reasons behind why math is being done the way it is currently being done. Michelle, I'm looking at you. Our age group, I'm a lot older than you, though. Adults nowadays, it's very common to run into people that aren't math literate, right? And it's our society accepts that it's okay to not be good at math. We want students to be able to make sense of what they're doing, and when they get a wrong answer, they understand, or they can approximate. They have mental math skills, and they can approximate, things. That comes by, good math practices, and by using number lines and things like that. That's the intent. And nowadays, I find I would say 80% of the teachers are still not fully trained. Those alternate methods that teachers tend to skip, they're designed to bridge the gap. And most of them in the CRA method that I was talking about earlier, most of them actually fall in that representational stage, using number lines, using, drawings. They have kids draw things and cross them out and all that. So, that's the stage that teachers tend to skip, because we did not learn that way. Yeah. And so that's, so for parents, just being patient and trying to, learn that strategy. If the only strategy is the one that you learned, that's fine, great. But, continuing to encourage your child that it is important to learn those other strategies, because they're the backup strategies, and they will help them get to the traditional way eventually.
So maybe the most powerful thing that a parent can do is be open to learning it a different way, and have your child explain to you the new way, and see if you guys can figure it out together. That way you're not stopping them from learning the concrete representational way, that which is the focus and the point of the new math, so that they can get to understanding it the way you were taught. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes. And a real quick example. One, we teach front end addition, and parents are like, well, this is silly. You always start at in the ones column. But do you really start in the ones column? Because when I'm at the grocery store, I don't sit there and start at the ones column, right? I start at, if I see something for $100 and another thing for, something for 115 and something else for 295, I start with the ones column, right? Because I need to know, oh, this is 300. Oh, I'm going to have to regroup. It's actually going to be 400. We actually do that in the real world, and that's what front end addition is supposed to help them develop the number sense for addition, so that when they are in the supermarket or buying cars or whatever, they can add numbers together efficiently, starting with that first number, so that they can approximate things easier.
So it's going to look really different than what you're used to, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. So just keep an open mind.
Correct.
So, awesome. Staci, I want to thank you so much for being here today. I think that you gave a lot of insight on what math should look like in a woke classroom, and some great resources and some great tips. So we really appreciate you stopping by.
Thank you so much.
Parents, I hope you got a lot out of that interview. Educators, I hope you picked up some great tips and some techniques that you can use in your classroom when you're designing your upcoming math lessons. Making sure to engage the student, making sure that they understand at a concrete level, giving them things to manipulate, allowing opportunities to move and think about what's going on before you introduce the abstract rules. Those are all important things that you have to make sure you're doing if you really want to create students who love math. Show notes and resources to all the awesome things Staci mentioned can be found on our website, www.justlikemepresents.com. Hop on over to our Facebook page, join the Just Like Me Presents group, and tell us which tip you found the most helpful. And if there's a question that you still have that you would like to ask, please make sure that you put it there and we will get it answered for you. Share this podcast with other parents or educators in your circle, and make sure you hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thank you again to Staci McDaniel for stopping by to chat with us. Join us next week where we will be talking about woke science instruction. STEM classes are all the rage right now, but we know that science instruction often is not taught at the level that we need it to be in our classrooms for our Black and Brown students. How do we change that? Join us next week and we'll talk about it. Thanks for listening. And remember, if our children can see it, they can achieve it.